Hello and welcome. My name is Annalise, and today we'll be talking about components of the Honors Program here at Malone University. The Honors Program allows students to choose their own challenges as they build skills and meet their college objectives. One of the components in the Honors Program is that of the Honors Thesis. So today I've invited Hannah Robinson and her thesis advisor, Dr. T.C. Ham, to talk about their thesis journey. Thank you so much for joining us, TC and Hannah.
Thank you for having us.
So, my first question for both of you is, TC, how would you describe the honors thesis to a new prospective student or parent?
The simple thing would be that it's a big paper, as she just wrote. It's a very big paper, but really it's several papers combined into one project. That takes about a year to do. So it's like taking two courses. So typically students take a thesis course in the fall, thesis course in the spring, and during those course times, you don't go to class, you work on research, meet with your advisor, work through your interests and hurdles, and then we come up with a plan for the project, whatever it might be. And it's really simplistic to say it's one big paper because there are different types of theses. So there are creative theses, performative thesis, artistic ones. So the most common one is like the research one, which Hannah just completed. So really it's anything you want to do that's grounded in scholarship, grounded in academics, but it could be expressive, it could be really like nerdy like she's done. But yeah, it's a big project that takes about 2 semesters to do, and it's a cumulative and also a culminating one. So what I mean by that is you build on the things that you've done in the past, and it serves as a capstone to bring all that you've learned into this one cohesive project.
Awesome. So Hannah, could you describe for us what is your honors thesis project? What did you do?
Yeah, so my research topic was how do biblical portraits of outsiders inform insiders? So I was studying the topics of inclusion and exclusion in the scriptures, and I narrowed my focus to 3 different narratives in the Bible that I felt like sort of served as a cross-section of that theme. So I studied the story of Rahab, the book of Jonah, and then the story of the Ethiopian eunuch from Acts 8. And sort of tied those together, looked at the theme of inclusion throughout Scripture, and then how that can apply to us today. So it was a neat opportunity for me to take a topic that I was interested in and just kind of dive deeper into it.
Oh, awesome. So what made you decide to pursue the completion of your thesis?
Yeah, well, I really have enjoyed my time in the honors program, and I've enjoyed taking classes with TC, so I anticipated the opportunity to get to study something deeper and to work on that deeper kind of theological study and study of biblical texts. So that was a driving force in me wanting to complete it, just getting that chance to do the research and to work with TC to put something together that sort of summed up what I've been learning during my time at Malone.
Nice. Awesome. So TC, what is the role of the thesis advisor in this process?
I guess it'd be 3 things. So a guide, a director, and a cheerleader. So the guide is, especially the first semester, trying to figure out what she's interested in because she has so many different varied interests, what the topic might be. And so we just sat out here and talked a lot about what she wants to spend a whole year researching and thinking about, right? Because if you're not interested in it, you're not going to sustain that year-long project. So that's the guide part. And sometimes that's too big, let's narrow this down. Well, you're really good at this or interested in that, so let's bring that in. So that's the guide part. The director part would be setting deadlines, reading all her drafts and giving her feedback, and then organizing. It's not just me, so for the honors thesis, I'm the advisor, but there are 2 other faculty members who's on the committee. So I have to organize those meetings for Hannah. They also read, give feedback. So there's a lot of directing, and it's like traffic directing. The cheerleader part is because it isn't a year-long process, she could get distracted or because she has so many other interests and she's focused on her music or her writing, then bring her back and encouraging her that this is a good project and it'll be fun. And it usually is very fun. And most honor students who complete the thesis are very glad that they did. So since it's a good thing, it's easy for me to cheerlead for that. Now, if it's gonna, it's always easier to support something that you believe in. So those are my roles, right? Anything to add to that? What else do I do?
Keep me on task. I needed it.
Awesome. So in this mentoring relationship, as you worked through the thesis process, what have been some of the challenges that you've encountered, some of the joys that you've encountered, and you both can speak to that. What do you think about that?
Oh, just working on it and finding the time. It's really hard. Like, you already have a lot going on in a semester, so actually taking the time to do something that doesn't necessarily have week by week deadlines can be really challenging. So that was something that I struggled with a lot at the beginning of the semester, was just budgeting the time for it. And because you don't have such immediate deadlines, just this like distant looming deadline, is a little bit hard to motivate yourself for at the beginning. So that was definitely one of the challenges. It meant that there were a couple of days of just like panic and procrastination, but it all worked out. And
that's when I send her the nice email, hey, where's that first chapter? And also to put a little external pressure, like these other people are waiting for it too, not just me, that she knows that I'd be gracious, but that's the directing part too. I think for me, there's no challenge working with a student. I mean, I've done this many times now and I enjoy it every time. The only challenge for me is, again, finding the time. Unlike a course where I'm given credit for the time that I spend preparing and in the classroom, this is a pure service thing that I do. So I have my normal load. So when I take on an honors student, I'm doing it out of love and I'm doing it out of service for her learning. I get no release of any kind in other areas. So I just have to find the time to read. How many pages did you just write?
I think it was 60.
So to read that, give feedback, and then reread the second draft, and also the meeting times, because especially second semester, we meet regularly to make sure that she's on task, and then organizing the time with other faculty members. Just finding that time is a bit of a challenge for me sometimes. But because it's a joyful thing, it isn't like, oh, I gotta do something. It's more like, who can I steal the time from, right? Because I've got so many hours in a day, and I'm like, okay, I guess I'm just taking it from that class, giving it to Hannah. But the joys are exactly that. And also, because typically a advisor and the student relationship is from a previous relationship, it's continuing that learning relationship. It's not just like socializing, but it's a intentional relationship that's based on mutual learning. And I know teachers say this almost like a cliche, but an honors thesis is not an area necessarily that I teach in, right? So she's talking about something I've never really taught or read. And so by engaging in it, I learned so much from every honors thesis I've advised. And so it's a great joy to do that too.
That's wonderful. Awesome. Thank you. So how did you break the process down? What did you guys do to make this an achievable goal at the end to result in a wonderful thesis project?
Well, the first semester, it was a lot of just talking through different options. So like TC said, I have a lot of interests and a lot of interests within the Bible. So we were trying to figure out what is something that, first of all, there's not already like a ton of people who've done the same project before. So you're looking for, in my case, a research topic that there's some pre-existing research, but it's something you're going to synthesize into something that there's not been too much other scholars, already saying the same thing. And then we also had to find something that I was interested in enough to work on for this long. So that's why we picked a couple different narratives. So it's not just a focus on a single passage. Once we had picked those narratives, we formed our committee at the beginning of the semester. And then we broke it down into a couple of different deadlines, which I missed a little bit. But I was only late by a week. And so that was like, okay, first draft is due by this time, or, the first couple chapters due by this time. So we broke the actual paper into different pieces and had those pieces due at different times, which made it a lot more manageable than just looking at, this is going to be a ton of pages, like do it all at once. It was done in chunks, almost like 3 separate research papers that were then tied together. I wrote an introduction and a conclusion and put that all together. So it was manageable, but only because we were able to make it in more like bite-sized pieces.
That's it. That's exactly it, right? Small steps, right? Whenever you're looking at a big task, it seems overwhelming. I can't write a thesis. But students have written papers. So if you can structure your thesis as small papers, it's much more manageable. Actually, for us, the toughest thing was because Hannah had so many interests. I remember sitting out here thinking, okay, initially she was going to write on her own name's sake, the character of Hannah in the Bible. So we went everywhere and finally narrowed it down to the topic. But once you have that, I feel like all you got to do is just structure it. Chapter 1 is your first paper, chapter 2 is your second paper. And if you're thinking about writing 5 papers in 2 semesters, that's very doable, right? So I think if you manage it that way and think of it that way, then it really isn't, it shouldn't be intimidating at all. But students think, especially when like freshman year, I got to write the honors thesis my senior year, and it seems intimidating when you think like 60 some pages, but yeah, it's lots of little pages over a semester at least, right?
So breaking it down is the key to success.
And if you're an honors student, you're probably accustomed to writing to some extent anyways, or doing research projects. So I think the main reason it sounds intimidating is, like you said, you're looking at it as a chunk and as a whole, rather than thinking about the countless times that you've done smaller projects before. This is just an assimilation of smaller projects, basically, over the course of 2 semesters, just like you would do with another class. It's just more independent, and you get to choose what you're studying.
And you get to choose your advisor.
So you chose TC.
I did choose TC. Before I even had my topic, I was like, TC, will you help me?
That's awesome. So now that you've completed the process together, you're almost at the very point of completion, right? What advice would you give to a prospective student as they're looking at starting the honors program, as they're looking at starting their thesis process? What would you say to them?
I would say take the first couple of years to explore the kind of things that you're interested in and start to build. You can even start building a list, topics that intrigued you, something you want to learn more about in one of your classes. Know yourself, know what kind of projects you enjoy doing. If you want to push yourself, like I did, by doing something I'm less comfortable with, which is a research paper, you can go that route. If you feel like, oh, I absolutely despise research papers, I never want to do one of those this size, like there are other options, there are creative options. So know what you're interested in studying, know what kind of project you think would really bring you joy, because you don't want it to be a chore. You want it to be something where you're learning, but you're also enjoying what you're learning.
Because the honors program at Malone isn't housed in one area, the paper could be anything. So Hannah will be presenting her paper, her honors thesis, in 2 days. And there's one on science that I didn't even understand the title. So it's some sciencey research paper. So that advice is perfect, like especially in your own field. I think the only thing I might add is because it's such a relational thing, whereas in a classroom I'm relating to 15, 20, 30 students, an honors thesis is one-on-one. Right? It's much more intentional. I would probably advise a student to get to know somebody early and build a relationship and think, especially within your major, and you think, oh, this person could be my advisor, and get to know them Because like I said, this is pure service. And some people might, if you don't have a built-in relationship already, I might have said, I'm just too busy. But how am I gonna say no to Hannah? Because we've already had that relationship. So I think I would advise, especially early on, like sophomore year especially, get to know your faculty pretty well. And especially Malone, every faculty member wants to know you and wants to get to know you and build relationships. So it's not like you have to overcome a hurdle. You just have to make a tiny little effort and show up at their office or something. So that would be the only thing I could add.
Awesome. Well, thank you both so much for joining me here today. I appreciate it. Thank you for sharing your perspectives with me and with our audience here. Thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to talking with you next time.
For more information about the benefits of the Honors Program, the application process, and scholarship opportunities, visit www.malone.edu/honors.